everybody. Welcome to the Route Consultant Weekly Webinar for Emergency Medical Services. My name is Josh Gregory, and I am the Vice President of Education here at Route Consultant. If you've never heard of us, our team ran one of the largest logistic operations in the country and has had a decade of experience valuing, selling, and consulting on these types of businesses. So the goal of these webinars are to help you understand the opportunity that comes with the EMS industry, help kind of talk through a lot of topics pertaining to the industry. So if you are looking at it, if you are trying to figure out if this is the right space for you or not, we're here to talk through all of it, help you have that foundation. And then if you do decide that you want to proceed in the space, give you all the resources you need to move as quickly as you can. Now, whether you're here live or not, we're always interested in your questions. So if you're watching this on YouTube later, you're welcome to reach out to us, email, call us, send in whatever questions you have. And we're always happy to respond to those and really help you feel as comfortable and confident as you can if you do decide this is the right space for you. Now, if you've been on these in the past, if you've been on here the last few weeks, a lot of different topics we talk about. Last week, we actually talked in depth about one extreme in this business, which is those rare instances when you're dealing with really serious emergencies. This week, we're going to kind of come back to the non-emergency side of things. And it's a really important factor when you're talking about that side of the business, because we typically think of ambulances as really the only vehicle that works in this space. And it's a very specific image in our head of exactly what those vehicles look like. But there are really important additional vehicles that you can look to add when you're talking about the non-emergency business. So we're going to talk through all of that today, and Hans Vikir and I will be on here to talk through it. And again, if you haven't gotten a chance to talk to or meet with Hans, he's a wealth of knowledge in this space. He's operated, he's owned, he's mentored tons of people as they got into the space for the first time. And so if it is that you are looking to get into this space, he's going to be one of your best resources for it. So Hans, if you want to go on ahead and come on and we'll get started. Hey, Hans.
Hey, good afternoon, Josh. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Perfect. So, as I let in, if I'm not talking about traditional ambulances in this space, what type of vehicle am I kind of referring to that you'd be adding to your fleet for this non-emergency side?
Okay, definitely. You would be really targeting the wheelchair vans. So there's different type of wheelchair vans. You'll see the smaller type. It looks like a minivan, but it'll have the wheelchair ramp on the back. Or you'll see the more traditional type that's used in the space, which is like a multi-passenger van. It's a little bit bigger. They usually come in one standard color, like a white. It has the like heavy top roof. So you can stand inside the van, and it'll have the wheelchair lift most likely in the back of the truck, right? The other minivans, you'll see them on the side, or you'll see them mostly on the side. Now, lately though, you will see the transit vans that are used similarly for the EMS space. You'll see those in the wheelchair vans now as well, in the wheelchair going non-emergency room. So sometimes you will even go as far to see a wheelchair and a stretcher compartment in the the transit vans.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, for everybody who's on here and thought that the only way you could transport patients would be in an ambulance, why would you look at adding one of these types of vehicles?
Well, you know what? When I first got into this business, I heard that the ambulance thing was a no-no, right? Because of the brokers, and
Yep.
nobody wants somebody going into your pocket or cutting your fees in half just for a referral. So everyone advised me, don't do it. But what they did advise me to do was get a wheelchair van, and it'll help you market to the nursing homes, hospice, for those clients that don't necessarily meet the needs of your Medicare stretcher patients. But I would go to someone like yourself that works or owns a nursing home, and I would say, hey, I can transport all your wheelchair patients to doctor's appointments that their insurances aren't paying for, and they'll pay you directly. And also, can you give me some of your stretcher patients? So it's almost like, hey, I'm going to do this and alleviate you guys for having to call different companies, or even if your wheelchair van is used, because most nursing homes might have their own wheelchair van. But again, it was a great step into the nursing home space.
Okay. So
So it was a marketing tool.
did you start with wheelchair vans or did you add them on? Like, when did you add them on in your business?
2.5 years later on.
Yeah.
If when people do go back and look at our webinars, I always talked about concentrating on one thing. So for like the first year and a half, I really just solely focused on my scheduled stretcher patients.
Got it. Okay, so once you've added this wheelchair van, now you're working with nursing homes. Is it something that people could start with just a wheelchair van, or do you feel like it's something where you kind of need a brand image already in kind of the traditional type of vehicles, and it's an add-on, or could you start with a non or with a wheelchair van?
You could definitely start with a wheelchair van, and I think it just depends on every individual and their capacity to really uh, start the company. We're going to talk, I guess, about the different costs and different, the pros and cons of that. But you could definitely just start with a wheelchair van.
Okay, got it. So when you're talking about working with the nursing homes, is it something you still schedule routine visits with, or is it only as needed? What does the structure look like there?
Yeah, most of the time, nursing homes will give you all their patient schedules, doctor's appointments, because they want you to have enough time to schedule your employees.
Hmm.
And the nursing homes will usually pay you directly. Medicare will allocate a certain amount of funds to nursing homes just for, doctor's appointments and transportation.
Got it. Okay. So is it something you found that you were going back to often? Like you'd be working with a nursing home every week, or is it more of a rarity type thing?
No, it's every week. It's every week. That wheelchair van, our wheelchair van was great. It was every week and it was hard to staff,
Got it.
right? So, yeah, it was pretty frequent. There's
Okay.
a company, well, they started in Georgia and they just did wheelchair vans, and now they're in like 5 different states. And
Okay.
all they do is wheelchair van transportation.
Yeah. Yeah. And do they pay similar rates to what you get as an ambulance owner?
It always has to be comparable to, no, 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 I apologize. No, I was going to say Medicaid rates,
Yeah.
but no, as far as an ambulance stretcher owner, no, it's like less than half, depending on the states.
Okay. So each state's going to do it differently, and it's based on
Yeah.
Medicare rates or Medicaid rates.
But Medicare will always pay stretchers more, but some of the rates for the wheelchairs transportation can vary.
Got it. And with this type of patient, are you ever able to transport multiple people at the same time?
Yes. So for nursing homes, especially, you can have, patients that not necessarily need to be in a wheelchair that can sit in the van and the other, passenger compartment
Yeah.
chairs. So you can go to like multiple doctor's appointments, and you're doing that with only one employee, which
Hmm.
is pretty cool.
Okay. And would you ever carry multiple patients with the other side of your business, or do you only find that this is an option on the ambulance van or the wheelchair vans?
If I carry patients on the other business, it's a bad day.
Yeah.
That means that somebody's on the stretcher and somebody's on the bench. And if you have to do that, it must be a real emergency.
Got it.
So
Yeah.
hopefully we can avoid that.
Yeah. So on the wheelchair side, it sounds like it's an opportunity for a new market. And it may not pay at the same rate, but there's some, kind of efficiencies of scale from being able to move multiple people around in the same van. And like, what's typical? Is it usually just one, or, what's the most number of people you've ever transported at the same time?
Yeah, I've seen other companies transport more than one person at the same time. I've never done it, never really had to, because the nursing home that I worked with, they were very well, their schedule was put together very well.
Got
And
it.
they did it with the assumption that we were only using one van and one van that could only carry one person. Although our wheelchair van at the time had the capacity to carry 3 to 4 people, but they always scheduled it with enough time to take one person while they're at the doctor's appointment, they would, we can go pick somebody else up. But as I say that, there is one negative or maybe a deterrent to doing the doctor's appointment. A lot of the times, you are the person taking the patient to the doctor's appointment. And so the doctor's going to request that you stay with the patient.
Hey. Oh, wow. Yeah.
So you can't really even drop them off and go like you do, like you can with the stretchers. I can
Yeah.
just drop you off, go somewhere, go. No, you got to stay there.
Yeah, I could see that where it's one of those where they need somebody to stay just in case, and you're only available option.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. And
So
so
do you view this more as, a business line like that is, pure in and of itself, or kind of an add-on extra revenue type of opportunity?
definitely an add-on now. I've always thought about it because I've seen some of
Yeah.
my peers become quite successful. But the trend lately for the last 2 years, because of the way Medicaid specifically uh, sends all their patients out to brokers, brokers send them to you, the fees have cut drastically as far as your reimbursement fees. So I'm seeing now this trend where a lot of the people that have wheelchair vans are slowly transitioning to the stretcher ambulance side and providing both. So
Yeah.
yes, it's the icing on the cake, but it's never going to be my main source of income.
Got it. But it's definitely an important side to add to your overall business portfolio in the space.
Oh, it's a very sweet side,
And
very, very good.
you mentioned nursing homes. Are there any of the other types of markets that you'll target with these vans?
Yeah, assisted living facilities,
Mhm.
sometimes hospice where, somebody doesn't necessarily need a stretcher, but they might be too weak to walk, right? And the great thing about the wheelchair vans are you do not need the doctor's paperwork to sign off on it to transport that patient, right? Like, so when you're doing a stretcher transport, the doctor has to say this is a medical necessity, right? But with the wheelchair van, you don't have to do that. And you can help people go to the prom if they can't walk, Special Olympics, you
Oh
can
yeah.
cater to those, psych um, hospitals where, somebody needs to get transported and they're suffering with just dementia, nothing, serious. Not to say that that's not serious, but nothing where, it
Yeah.
can hurt them physically, right? And so you can help people go to funerals, you can help people go to special engagements. So the wheelchair van can be used in a way that if someone wants to go to a special event and they don't really want to be seen in a stretcher to stop people from worrying or panicking, or in an ambulance, I mean, but they want to go comfortably. Even churches have wheelchair vans. So there's a huge benefit to adding the wheelchair van to your fleet of ambulances. In fact, I would dare to say that I don't know of any, and I don't know all, but I don't know of any successful ambulance company that does not have a couple of wheelchair vans added to their fleet.
Got it. I think that's a good call out because it may not be the main thrust of your business, but it's one of those things that, you definitely need to have.
Yeah.
We talked about a lot of the benefits here, though. What are some of the challenges of running these types of vehicles?
One of the challenges are the big challenge, and this is what gets everyone, you know, transitioning to the stretcher. It's every state has a broker, whether it's a company, Motive Care, Southeast Tran, or something of the sort. They're constantly changing names or changing contract brokers. Every state has one. So if you can remember when we talked about the way they pay, Medicare pays for stretcher patients and Medicaid pays for wheelchair patients. You remember that?
Yeah.
And but we said that with Medicare, excuse me, I can bill them directly. If you're Medicare, I can say, hey, Josh, this is what it costs $800 for me to take this person from point A to point B and back from point A to point B, right? And you're going to pay me that $800. Well, Medicaid says, nope, Josh has a middleman. So Medicaid is going to refer all their patients to this middleman, and the middleman is going to send that doctor's appointment maybe to two, three to 10 other wheelchair companies. So you can say, I'll transport this patient for $100, but they might send it to me and I'll say I'll do it for 90. It's very similar to the trucking industry where think of the broker as a dispatcher and they're sending these loads out, but the loads are people. And
Mhm.
now a lot of people can bid on that particular load. A lot of non-emergency medical transportation companies can say, I will do that. So if you have someone who they really don't understand profit margin and pricing, they can really outbid themselves and outbid everybody else, but really hurt the industry standard by,
Yeah.
doing a job for so low.
Got it. Yeah. So if it's, just because it's competitive and there's brokers can lead to people who don't know what they're talking about, bid too low and then no one makes any money and the people who got the job may get the job and then, a year later are out of business because they got a lot of jobs that they made zero money on and kind of, you're right, hurts everybody.
Exactly. And that was one of the big things that you hear from people that are in trucking that are converting to healthcare. It's because during COVID, it was such a great time. And then after COVID, everybody got into the trucking business where people were lowballing and picking up loads, and they were like, there's really no profit in it. So you just have to be mindful. You want to pay attention to what your state's paying. And if you are dealing with a broker, make sure it's comparable to what the state would pay you or the state's paying for these trips.
Gotcha. So there's definitely value in this, but I think that makes a lot of sense why making it your main line of business makes it really exciting because you've got to do a lot of work to bid, find the right jobs, and make sure you're pricing correctly. And that might mean that you don't always get the jobs because you can't justify the rates that they're paying at that point. So in that way, it does make a lot of sense as an add-on where it's like, I've got this service, I want to offer it. Just having the service probably gives you some brand recognition and gives you some extra value, even if you don't use it, but just being able to say you have it. But then when the right opportunity comes up, or the right partnership with a nursing home, you can get, a series of those jobs and make good money.
Yeah. And another thing is, one of the benefits to this, you don't have to solicit, right? You don't have to go around looking outside of the nursing home. Once you get a contract with one of the brokers, they're going to constantly send you patients. It might not be as much as you want, but you can start right away and start, gaining some revenue for your business. So that's actually a great plus.
Yep. And that makes sense. Is it now, like, how do the costs compare for getting one of these vehicles?
Definitely. Now, we discussed in the past that ambulances can go up to 110,000, 15,000 for a new ambulance. A used ambulance, depending on the year, make and model, the condition, maybe low as 20, but typically now you're looking at 35 to maybe 60 to 70,000 on a ambulance, and that's a pretty old ambulance, right? Wheelchair vans, my first wheelchair van was $8,000 and it lasted a good 2 to 3 years. So wheelchair vans are definitely a lot cheaper. They don't require a lot of maintenance. You don't have to worry about getting lights done and all this. There's only one AC unit that goes from the front to the back. You don't have to worry about, having different compartment units that you have to repair. So the cost can easily uh, range from 30 to $40,000 difference on new and used ambulances compared to new and used wheelchair vans. So even if you're getting into this business, you don't have that much startup capital, the wheelchair van might be a good route for you.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense too, especially when you're thinking about it as just additional revenue. It's even nicer to know that the costs are a lot lower, so you can get more value out of it without having to, put a ton of capital in.
Yeah,
Um, do you think it's ever worth it to get an electric ramp?
I would. I'm trying to buy an electric ambulance. I want to be the
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
The benefit of an electric wheelchair van would actually be amazing because it's not there's not that many stop and goes and idle time like there are with stretchers, right? If I drop a patient off to dialysis, my truck is probably sitting for 3.5 hours if I don't have another patient. And they say that sometimes statistically, you're burning more fuel just sitting idle than when you're actually moving. So
Yeah.
if I have an electric van, electric time, I have time to charge the truck. I'm not spending money on fuel. So that's a great question. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, if I had an electric wheelchair van, I'd love life right now.
Got it. Okay. Now we've talked about the costs on the vehicle side. Are there any specific types though of those vehicles that you would suggest, or is there anything in particular?
Yeah, if I'm starting, I'm probably going to start with the multi-passenger van, right? You don't want to exclude anyone because if you do market to a nursing home and they do have patients, but not necessarily wheelchair patients, you can still take the other patients that are ambulatory that can walk a little and still get the mission complete by taking them to dialysis, or hospitals or whatever doctor's appointments they have to go to. So from that aspect, I would probably get the bigger um, van type,
Hmm.
multi-passenger wheelchair van with the the wheelchair van lift in the back, so you can have more patients in the side and the front. But again, that's just what I did, and I found it to be very favorable within my first, 2 years of owning it. It just was working wonders. It was that emergency van we had for everything.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. Is it something where you would ever transport a patient that you would typically put in an ambulance? Is there ever a scenario where you would put them in one of these vehicles?
That would be again last minute. Let's say all your trucks are down, something's wrong. You have a patient that is not supposed to go on wheelchair, supposed to go into a wheelchair, but you know that they can sit, right? There's that little fine line, that gray area of what am I going to do? Am I going to do what's best for the patient, right? And get them to this place. So a lot of things go into that. A lot of things you have to factor in. If it's the patient's dialysis, then I'm going to take a chance. I'm not going to bill that person, right? So you're basically doing it pro bono,
Yeah.
because you know that you're only supposed to bill them when they're on a stretcher.
Mm,
But if the patient, let's say hypothetically, missed two other treatments because of whatever, and now it's on you that he's missing this third treatment. I don't want that patient's life on my conscience, right? I'm taking that patient. I'm going to explain to the facility. Listen, I know that we usually transport, this patient via stretcher, but somebody called out. We were down a man. Whatever the scenario is, I'm going to explain it to them. Let them know it was a one-time thing. Because again, with stretcher patients, they're supposed to be on a stretcher for a reason. So you want to make sure you're not going against doctor's orders. You
yeah.
don't want to go against your medical necessities that the doctor signed off, saying that the patient should be on a stretcher. And so you want to make sure that you're explaining to people this was a one-time thing. It was a one-off, it was an anomaly. We have to get Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so to dialysis. This is the third treatment they've missed. Very extreme circumstances where I'm going to do that, but everyone's going to know, everyone's going to, be aware of it. You don't want anyone ever thinking you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And I think that's an important call out is like you shouldn't think of these as just a spare vehicle because there are very specific reasons and very specific things you have to have in a vehicle to be able to bill and to be in compliance. So it can be a resource if you're out of all options and you're just trying to help a patient, which at the end of the day, it's what we're trying to do in this industry. But this is not a spare ambulance. That is,
Yeah.
yeah, that is important to understand.
And when I say I'm exhausting all options, I'm calling other affiliate ambulance companies. I'm calling the family member and asking them, is there another way that they could get this person there? Like before I do that, I'm exhausting all other options. And it has to be like the worst case scenario. Okay, I have to take them to dialysis because, the more treatments they miss, their mortality rate,
Yeah.
increases. So you want to make sure that you're doing your part. And it should never be on you if that person gets worse or gets better in that aspect, right? As an owner or anyone, just an EMT, I'm going to do what I have to do to get that patient to dialysis and make sure that I document it, but I'm not billing for it because that's not the service that I'm supposed to provide for that patient.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Now, are there any specific requirements for your employees to drive one of these?
In Georgia, it's you get a license, not an EMT license, just a business license. And Josh, you can jump on my wheelchair van, right? I'm
Yeah.
going to do the particular training on how to make sure the seatbelts are on. I'm going to train you on how to use the wheelchair lift and have at it. I'm going to make sure you drive safely. But no, you don't have to be an EMT to answer your question or any kind of medical, but you would want at least at minimum your wheelchair employees to be CPR certified,
Yeah.
right? BLS certified. That's like a 1 or 2 day class. So at minimum, even though you don't need it, it's not required. Now, keep in mind, some states do require a wheelchair training, but
Hmm.
there's not a medical certification that you have to have.
Got it.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, and I
but
think that's a big deal too when you're thinking about ways. I mean, maybe it's even to just put a new employee on a lighter route just to see how they do, or somebody who's still finishing their training. If you've got somebody who's going through their couple of month training and they're trying to finish up, but you want to still have some things where you can generate some revenue, that might be a good way before they're there and finally done and able to go in an ambulance to put them out in one of these wheelchair vans and still help them start to take the steps to understand what they'll be doing in a day and generate some revenue for the business.
That's exactly right. I've done that in the past.
Yeah.
I've had some people apply and they say, I'm gonna, I'm almost done with EMT school. I'll be done in 3 more months. I just wanted to know if I could do ride time with you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
ride time? You can actually work here. I got a wheelchair van out, like, and they get so excited because they get to study while the patient's at the doctor's appointment and
Oh
they
yeah.
get to see everything, learn hands-on. So that is actually a great scenario. Yes, that happens a lot in this world. And you're now building a future employee that can get converted from your wheelchair van to your ambulances, and they've done enough wheelchair, hopefully, by the time you do hire them as an EMT, that they can always go back if you need an extra person and you don't have to train them on a wheelchair van. So there's benefits to having that no certification
Yeah. I think
situation.
that's a great kind of thought process for ways in which you can start to use your employees differently or bring new employees in. But it's just good to know in general that as you get into this, if this is one of your first steps or if you're adding it to your business, there's not a lot of licenses or anything really different you have to do. Is there any different license at all from, if you're getting into this?
No, and that's why I tell people if you have the financial capability to do both and you have the manpower to do both, I would just suggest, my personal opinion is to start with the ambulance company, right? Because you're going to have to go through all the trials and tribulations of becoming an ambulance provider. But once you get that certification as an EMS company in your state, you can always just add a wheelchair van right under that license. Now, if you start with a wheelchair, yes, there's no licenses, but when you want to add on ambulances, now you got to go through that whole process. So it just to me, it's just let me get the tough work out the way and get my ambulance going, and then I can always add the wheelchair van. But you have to do what's best for you. In certain cases, somebody might not have the capital to start an ambulance company, so they start with the wheelchair van, and hopefully they build enough revenue to save up to buy their ambulances or,
Got it.
move up into that situation.
Yeah, I think that makes
So,
sense. And I think it's just this is one of those things we like to bring to people of like, different opportunities in the space to think through as you're, what are all the different veins and the different things that you have access to when you enter this space and start to wrap your mind around all of the different options here. And so it's not all ambulance. And we always start by, helping people understand that an ambulance isn't exactly what you think it is. It doesn't mean that you're always doing an emergency. And so kind of understanding all of the options here, this is just one additional facet where it's additional revenue, additional line of business, additional markets that you can add on to your business. It's pretty low barrier to entry in terms of pretty cheap vehicles, not a lot of licensing or really anything to have an employee on that vehicle. And so it's a great thing to add as a service to expand your portfolio and start to bring in some
mhm.
additional revenue as you get into space.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great way. Like, I think that's it right there. It's a great way to add additional revenue. And you're in the transportation business. So why not add all the ways that you can transport a patient to it almost makes no sense to not have it, right? Because
Yeah,
people are going to go online and they're going to look for non-emergency. You want to make sure that you have all those services to provide to them because
yeah,
they're looking for either a wheelchair van or an ambulance or both, right? And
yeah,
so you don't want to turn down opportunities. And a lot of your money will come from the private sector, from your website, and from your Google SEO. So a lot of people need this transportation, and they're not necessarily going to go to a social worker. They're going to look for you online when somebody has to transport mom or dad.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And people don't always know what they're looking for. They don't always Google the right thing. So if you have more
Mhm.
services and you pop up, even if they're looking, they may really be looking for a wheelchair van or they may really be looking for an ambulance. But if you have both, odds are higher that you're going to capture the audience and the clients that you want to capture.
Yeah, and then another great thing is, well, I take that back. This is not a great thing, but when someone typically is in the wheelchair state and they become your patient for a long time, a lot of times, unfortunately, they start to convert into becoming your stretcher patient. So
Right.
even building those type of relationships, unfortunately, are still beneficial to you, but you will be there to witness certain times the decline of the patient. And even as a provider, you can actually suggest, hey, do you think this will be more appropriate? Because you'll see the struggle of that patient getting in and out of that wheelchair. So there's so many benefits to actually adding a wheelchair van, knowing that you are the healthcare provider that can probably make the suggestion to the doctor or the nurse that nobody's paying attention to, because they just see the end part. They just see the patient getting transported from the bed to the wheelchair van or wheelchair van to, wherever, but they don't see the struggle with that patient. So sometimes you can be the patient's advocate and speak for them and say, hey, this is this. Now, yes, that will benefit your company, but you're also doing the right thing as well.
Yeah, it comes back to, everything we talk about all the time of this is a business where, yes, it's a logistics and a transportation business, but what you're transporting are people. And
Yeah.
as much as you can understand that, build those relationships, work with your clients, sure, it'll benefit your business, but it's also going to help improve the lives of those patients, improve their outcomes even. And at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants in this business, where our profit and success are tied to intrinsically helping those in our communities.
Yeah. And one thing, Josh, I know we talk about a lot of the complexities of owning an ambulance business and owning a wheelchair business, but I want to say I don't want people to misunderstand the whole concept behind EMS. It's really, really simple. You say it all the time. We talk about it. It's just doing what's right. Treating someone like how you would want someone to treat your mother, a family member, and we are here to teach people about all the options, whether good or bad, everything that can happen, all the variables that are out there. But the basic concept of EMS or healthcare is doing what's right for the patient, and you will be highly successful.
That's right. Perfect. I think that encapsulates it nicely, Hans. So I think we'll go ahead and call it here again.
All
If you're
right.
looking for ways to continue to meet with us in person, lots of different ways you can work with Hans as you're either starting a business or acquiring one. But the next kind of upcoming event is we have our big contractor expo. It's for a variety of businesses. EMS is one of them. It's in Dallas at the first week of August. I think it's the first through the third or the second through the fourth. I'm sure you can find it on our website. It is free to attend, and we would encourage you to go ahead and book that hotel room though, because those are selling out. But just importantly, the day before the expo, that Friday of that weekend, we're doing a big new investor summit for everyone, whatever industry you're looking to get into. EMS is one of them. So if you want to come out there, that's going to be an opportunity to meet with our team, meet with Hans, learn about the space, and then you'll have the expo the rest of the weekend to learn as well. So hopefully we'll see you all out in Dallas. And other than that, we'll see you all next week. So Hans, thank you for being here, and thanks everybody for being on.